All right, Module 6C, the third part of Module 6. I'm going to talk in this segment about loyalty and advocacy and how we might measure those. We talked about advocacy a little bit in the second lecture, but we'll talk about it again here. So we have an understanding of these behaviors that constitute these things and how we might go about in business measuring them so that we can achieve them. Again, the strategic goal of every organization to be to earn relationships between the people that it serves, that it calls employees, the people that it serves, that it calls customers, and obviously the people that it serves, that it calls investors as well. But that is the goal. That is the point of the org. If we can achieve relationships and make a profit, we've got a framework for success, strategy plus tactics in the context of business. All right, so we talked in the last lecture, we talked about trust. We talked about trust being broken into two parts, the things that we do to more generally demonstrate that we are capable of influencing our customers and our employees, and then those things that we do to influence our caring systematically. Because again, we want to build a relationship that's sustainable in the context of our leadership framework, our leadership capacity for caring and our leadership capacity for influence, along these lines here. Remember this chart. Great leaders are defined by this shift. These great leaders defined by this shift from the bottom left to the upper right. Okay, so the first way in which we do that is to earn trust, and then we want to move from trust to loyalty to advocacy. So now let's talk about this concept of loyalty. Again, an early indicator, going back to this diagram, an early indicator, a leading indicator to how much profit will be available in the future is what kind of recurring engagement that we can get out of our customer and our employee ecosystem. That's how we'll know we're going to be able to maximize this profit in the future. All right. So loyalty. So I've got a framework for you to talk through loyalty. I think loyalty is a little more complex than trust. Trust is hard to do, but we understand it because we spend most of our lives thinking about trust and how we're going to earn it. So we went through this exercise of defining trust, understanding what it takes to make it. It takes time. It occurs through experience. We talked about Daniel Kahneman, and this is a step function, this area under the curve thing being interesting to think about, but the fact that it only occurs when there's an experience. All right. So loyalty. Let's start talking about loyalty. So if we did the same thing for loyalty that we did for trust, and we tried to break it down in the context of our capacity for caring and our capacity for influence, loyalty let's go here. Loyalty is this concept of sustainable self-determined loyalty, is the concept of engagement. Like, are they actually engaging with you over time? And I think it's dangerous to think about loyalty or trust, for that matter, in the context of dollars. This is why I try to separate the dollars that we make are the tactics. The strategy that we have is in how we move people in this direction, like towards this North Star thing, which is building relationships with each other through the context of our products and services. So that's loyalty. And I believe there's 4 factors involved in the production of loyalty. And I'm going to go through each of them in turn, but there's 4 factors, and I draw them in an infinity model like this because it's like you can never stop earning loyalty. It takes time, it takes energy, and it takes lots and lots of effort. And loyalty, like trust, is something that you have to earn, and like advocacy, it's something that you have to earn, and it takes time to do it. But like trust, you have to give trust to get trust. And what I've found in my travels is that people that don't give trust very easily are typically not very trustworthy themselves. Not a universal truth, but it's something that I commonly see. People that don't trust are hard to get trust from. You have to give trust to get trust. So if you think about what we talked about in the context of trust, you know, this framework here, all of these things that you could do, all these tactics you could deploy to earn trust faster are investments that you would make to get that trust. So to demonstrate that you're reputable, you'd make investments in things like case studies and getting testimonials and having an advocacy program and having statistics and measurements around advocacy. You have to invest in these things. You have to invest in training your people to make commitments. You have to invest in the language, in consistency in the language by building a culture. You have to invest in transparency by making the things that are not so transparent to the outside world, transparent to the outside world. You have to invest in demonstrating vulnerability and demonstrating that you listen. All of these things cost energy, they cost time, they cost money, and you have to invest in trust to get trust. And the same thing applies to loyalty. Like you have to invest in loyalty in order to get loyalty. Okay? So let's talk about it. Let's talk about what it takes to build authentic, sustainable loyalty in any human ecosystem. The first thing I think it takes is common sense. I'll draw it in blue because that's how I use blue for trust. But the first thing I believe it takes is to do over time, to build trust over time. You have to do all of the things that you said you were going to do when you were earning trust. TOPS, trust over time. Like I said before, if you don't do those things, if you're consistently doing those things, if you're making commitments and keeping commitments, you're being reputable, you're making promises, you're keeping them, you will earn trust. And when you do that over and over again, you become known for that thing that you do that earns you that trust. You start to earn loyalty. You start to see these behaviors of loyalty exhibited. And again, behaviors of loyalty are always around recurring engagement. So we'll go through an exercise and define what we mean by loyalty in a minute and how you might measure it. I'll actually show you how we do it at ITX with our existing customers. So I'll walk you through our tool and the language that we actually use so you have a real world example of how you might measure trust and how you might measure loyalty. All right, so the next thing is this concept of effort. And here's what I found. You cannot build sustainable loyalty without reducing your customers' effort across the board. Sustainable loyalty does not come if you don't make their lives easier. Think about that for a minute. Tony Fadell, he was an Apple designer. He worked with Joni Ives. And he had this, when he presented, I saw him present at a conference one time. When he presented, he always had this slide that he put up of a perfect academic quad. And it made me think of the U of R quads. You know how if you stand at the end of the U of R quad near the chapel and you look at Rush Rees, you look at the beautiful stacks and the beautiful building, ivy-covered walls, and you look at the grounds and they're perfectly green, right? And there's a crisscrossing, beautiful sidewalks going across the quad, and the quad is brilliant. But if you look closely, you'll see patterns in the grass and worn paths in the grass where people actually walk. You'll see this worn out pattern where people actually walk across the quad, like right across. There's beautiful sidewalks, but they don't walk on the sidewalks. The reality is people over time will always do what's easier for them. We're lazy. I'm lazy. You're lazy. Your employees are lazy, and your customers are lazy. So you have to recognize that whatever you're doing in the world has to make their life better. You have to like reduce effort for them at every turn. And you need to build this into your culture, that this is how loyalty gets earned. Like if you allow your people to push work off on your customers, that's what they're going to do. Here's a simple tactic for that. I wrote a paper on this. It's up in Medium. It's called Asking Questions, or it's called Asking Bad Questions Can Damage Your Relationships. So here's the tactic. It's a simple tactic. If you teach your salespeople to ask a lot of questions, because we historically think of this as like a good thing to do. You ask good questions, and your customers will have respect for that because you're trying to get to the truth. You're trying to ask the 5 whys. Great. The problem is, if you're asking questions that you could have gotten the answers to yourself, you're wasting your customers' time and they know it. And people often use asking questions as an excuse to like offload the work. I'll just ask a question and then I'll wait for the answer and then I don't have to do anything in between. And this is a natural human behavior that I've seen over and over and over again. Like, you have to actually actively teach your people never to ask a question that they could get the answer to themselves. Okay, so coach them up, coach your people up. Ask questions, but ask good questions. And actually, what I teach my people to do is, rather than ask a question, make an assumption and state it. So, hey, I'm thinking that this is true. So I'm going to make decisions based on this truth. And when you do that, when you put the work in, you put the energy in to make assumptions versus asking questions just for the sake of asking questions, man, you build relationships faster, and you can really build loyal relationships when you learn how to structure your communication so that you're reducing the effort of your customers at every turn. At every turn. The next thing we've talked about a lot, this is the higher order problem concept. And this is like meeting these higher level needs, right? So meeting higher level needs for your customers. So this is the Maslow concept, like looking at the higher level needs beyond just what the problems they came to you to solve. So you have to solve the problems they came to you to solve in an easier way. Think jobs to be done framework, then they could do it in some other way. If they could do it in another way easier, they will. The next way to earn true loyalty is to build authentic relationships, thinking about this concept of belonging. Are your people building individual relationships with customers? Like, if you're a retail operation, when your customers come in every week to buy their groceries from you, or to get a latte from you, are you teaching your people to actually get to know their names, to learn who these people are, and to help them on a more than transactional basis? And to the greatest degree possible, you want to instill into your culture the importance of the humans in the ecosystem. And you do that by helping to raise their level of competence, self-esteem, raise their level of relevance, like have them be recognized interpersonally, raise their level of belongingness, like these are my people, this is my environment, they feel safe, comfortable, safety, and autonomy and choice and control. And having and thinking through this, and I've got a framework for that, which I'm going to get to today. So I've got a framework for how do you break down the language and teach your people how to build better relationships using a framework like the Maslow framework as an example. And to finish it off, one of the most valuable things I've seen work in terms of building authentic loyalty over time is making sure that you have systems in place to powerfully handle those service disruptions when they happen. Remember when I showed you the loyalty ladder? Handle service disruptions. They're going to happen. And people trust imperfection with integrity way more than they trust a perfect facade. So look at all of the sources of service disruptions in your ecosystem, all of them, and figure out where are bad service disruptions. Stack rank them in terms of their impact on the customer experience. Stack rank their service disruptions in the context of the customer experience. Which ones have the most negative effect most persistently, and build systems to handle those service disruptions really, really well. And it's hard to do. It takes time. Man, let me tell you, handling service disruptions has a powerful impact on moving people up the loyalty ladder. And even when you do it really well, here's a little thought experiment or an example for you. I think it was Marriott Hotels, one of the hotel chains. This thing went viral a while back. And it was a story about a little girl who left her teddy bear at a hotel. And she was crying, bawling, but the family had to go catch a plane. So they rushed out, left the teddy bear, couldn't find it. At some point later in the day, one of the maids found the teddy bear in the laundry and brought it to the concierge. And they're like, hey, we found the teddy bear. What are we going to do? So the concierge took the teddy bear and he went around the hotel. And he took pictures of it at the spa with sunglasses on, at the pool, the towel wrapped around it, in bed, taking a nap, all over the hotel, sitting down, having a nice meal at the restaurant, sent the pictures to the family, packed the bear up in a box, sent it home to the mom and dad. And obviously the story went viral. It was just a great story. But like, it's a little example of how you can actually build a real loyalty relationship with your consumers just by making, doing subtle things whenever you have a really bad service disruption. So think hard about the service disruptions in your customer ecosystem and how you can fix them. I think of this as a powerful tool for Instacart. I know that with Instacart, we've used it a few times. There's some pretty interesting things that can happen, and figuring out like what are those things and how can you handle them in a way that will create stories because you've handled them so well, and not ignore them. These are ways to build real, authentic, long-term, loyalty-based relationships. So these are the 4 functions of loyalty. All right. So let's talk about loyalty and how it actually works. So if we were to actually draw, these are the 4 ways in which you can earn loyalty faster. And there are lots of others. This is just a simple framework for thinking through how do I get my customers from trust to loyalty, to the stage where I can say authentically and powerfully, these are loyal customers. I know they're loyal because I get recurring engagement. Okay. So I want us to think mathematically now. So let's think about loyalty in terms of math. So this is my loyalty framework. I always draw it with little hearts in the middle, just to make it a little more memorable. We're circling around this concept of loyalty, and we're doing it by doing hard work. We're investing in the relationship, by investing in the service disruptions. We're investing in making sure our customer we're reducing effort for them. We're investing in solving higher level needs beyond just what they came to us to solve. And this is how you build loyalty over time. This is what I found to be a consistent way to earn loyalty over time. So now let's talk about that. So let's graph it. Let's do it mathematically. So if loyalty were a mathematical function, what would it look like? If loyalty were a mathematical function, what would it look like? Here's what I believe. Actually, let me do this on the doc cam. I think this would be more fun to do on the doc cam. All right. So if loyalty were a mathematical function, it would look like this. So function, loyalty. It would look something like the sum from whenever we first had our first experience until now of the perceived quality of all of the experiences, perceived quality of experiences times the number of experiences you had, right? So times time. At some function, it would look like this. If you were to plot that function on a graph, it would look something like this. It wouldn't be a smooth curve. It would still be a step function in some capacity, but over a longer period of time than trust. It takes longer. It takes much longer to earn loyalty than it does to earn trust. So it'd be somewhat of a smoother curve. It would have ups and downs. It would look something like this. We want it to go from the bottom left to the upper right. So that's how we're going to draw it, because we want it to look like this. Again, there's going to be service disruptions over time. So you're going to have more negative experiences, more positive experiences, but we want to be moving in this general direction so we can maximize the number of people that we have over this place that we're going to call the loyalty threshold, where we can claim them as loyal patrons, loyal customers, loyal, whatever language you want to use, but we can say their recurring engagement levels are high. They come to us when we have a problem that they can solve. So that's how we know they're loyal. And this is what it looks like. Now, if you were to take mathematically, if you were to take the integral, little calculus 101 here, of this formula, what would it give you? What would it show you? It would give you the area under the curve. All right, I'll give you the area under the curve. What does the area under the curve represent? The cumulative amount of time that they've spent experiencing your product or service, or the people in your organization And hopefully it's of high quality. And the higher quality those experiences were, the more loyalty you'll earn. So basically, the integral represents equity. What I would consider to be, in terms of the perceived quality of the experience, relationship equity. Relationship equity. All right. What this demonstrates to me is why you shouldn't use money as a measure of loyalty. And I've talked to a bunch of CEOs, and the first answer is almost always, well, I know they're loyal because they keep paying me. They keep paying, therefore they must be loyal. So here's what I've seen happen in business. What happens is we focus our energy, on the customers that we're still trying to earn trust from, because we want to build those relationships and get as many of these new prospective customers into the queue as we possibly can. So we focus on that. And then we also focus on the advocates, because they're awesome customers and they're giving us lots of love. And we're using that love to feed our culture with positive feedback, or to make improvements to our products and services through constructive feedback, or to turn their ideas into innovations. Like, we take care of those folks, and we tend to ignore the people in the middle, because they keep paying. They keep paying, so until they stop paying, we tend to not pay attention to people in the middle. And I think that's a mistake. I think it's a mistake, and I think it's a powerful leadership tactic to teach your team what loyalty means in this context. Loyalty only happens when people actually use your products and services in positive ways and have a good experience. This is how you build loyalty, through the perceived quality of the experience at every turn. If you want to keep it and you want to ultimately get to advocacy, you have to earn this loyalty, and you only earn it through experience. All right. So here's my slide, and here's the integral, and it works like this. And similar to trust, the goal is to try to condense the amount of time it takes to get there. And you can really only do that by systematically building better loyalty-related experiences. Again, a tactical way to think about how you might do that is to use a framework like this, like all the things you promised when you were earning trust over time, right? Handling service disruptions really, really well. So when you have those dips, you respond really well, and it becomes the story they tell when they become an advocate. You reduce effort for them, you just make their life easier, and you talk about the higher level needs. Like, you figure out how to help them meet these higher level needs that they all have. All right? So let's talk about the higher level needs. Higher level needs in the context of Maslow, I've created a framework called the tunnel, the Maslow tunnel. Actually, I'll show it to you here in a second. Got a little chart corner. It's a little ugly, but I'll show you. This is the workshop exercise that we do. And by the way, I want you guys to think about all of these things I'm showing you, all of these little constructs and frameworks and models that I'm showing you are tools that you can use in the wild with your teams as workshop exercises. Like, these are brainstorming tools. Like even this simple framework right here for loyalty. You put it up on the chart and you brainstorm around, hey, how could we help our customers reduce effort? And like, go deep on that, diverge, converge, use design thinking to figure out what are some unique ways we could really make the lives of our customers better by reducing their effort. Brainstorm out, identify all the common pain points, the service disruptions. How could you stand out in your customer ecosystem by handling service disruptions really, really well? And the same with Maslow. So this is a workshop exercise, and I've actually printed this silly thing out. I've got slides for it, so I'll show it to you on the slides. But I've printed it out on a grease board. Let me stand back so you can see the whole thing. With Maslow's diagram here, broken out into each of the frameworks so that we can talk about what does it mean to earn trust and loyalty and advocacy in the context of each of the dimensions inside of this framework. I love this framework. It's just so simple to use. So let me show you on the deck how I do that in the workshops. And it's just a very cool tool for thinking about, and you could do this in any context within which advocacy is important to your ecosystem. Hang on one moment. You might have too many slides if, okay, so I'm going to start with this. Pop up the slide deck with my little face at the top. Remember, I want to just do a refresher. We have extrinsic motivation, intrinsic motivation. Okay. We have Maslow deconstructed here. These are more extrinsic, these are more intrinsic, and it's a scale. Okay. Remember, self-determination theory kind of overlays on here. All right. And there is a relationship in terms of I need these problems solved now, and I need these problems solved before I die. There's a time horizon relationship. It's an imperfect relationship, but it isn't a relationship. So I like to draw it on a spectrum like this. Now, if we take each one of these concerns, each one of these needs in the Maslow hierarchy, and we break it down in terms of language and the words that we use to cause a change to occur in the relationship for these people, I come to you with some near-term, right now, immediate needs. Think of these as the physiological needs in the Maslow analogy, right? And this is how your customers or your employees are feeling in this when these needs are not being met. And there's a range of emotions that occur and a range of language that we use to explain these emotions when the immediate needs are not being met at all, or they're being really met well, or they're even being overmet. And I call this vice. So in terms of I'm having my needs met now, I'm miserable when they're really not being met, amotivated. I'm frustrated when they're not being met. I'm uncomfortable when they're not being met. And then I become comfortable. Okay, they're being met. This might be somewhat apathetic, but this is where your opportunity for earning trust over time starts to come in. And now fulfilled, they start to share it with others. They're outside of their own domain. This is an advocacy relationship. And then again to vice, which can be uncomfortable and can be unhealthy when you overdo it. Okay, safety, same thing. There's a set of language here. Controlled, fearful, manipulated. This is my autonomy is being threatened. My autonomy is being threatened. I'm out of control. Okay, now I have a little bit of control. Now I feel empowered. Now I'm actually empowering others in terms of my ability to control the situation. And ultimately, the vice would be I'm controlling others. I have control over others. And that's maybe not so healthy. All right. Next level up, esteem, confidence, competence. Right? Ignored, unaware, incompetent, competent, mastering and learning in the context of our work together. Ultimately, when you can teach others, right? You can share this competence, and then competing and winning, which can get unhealthy at the extremes, because this means someone has to lose, right? So if someone's winning, someone has to lose. That's vice. The next one up is belonging, connectedness, relatedness, purpose. At the bottom level, maybe lonely, excluded, disconnected. Moving up the chain here where we have the opportunity to earn trust, we can move them from disconnected to connected, or connecting in the context of others, advocacy, connecting others. And then ultimately I have status, like I have a esteemed status in this community of people, and I'm at a higher level than others. And that can become unhealthy, having status, all right? You take it to the extreme. And then ultimately, the highest level need, that need of relevance in the world, this before I die thing. If you feel irrelevant, this is amotivated, this is moving towards amotivation, apathetic, resistant, relevant, inspired. And then taking it to the next level, inspiring others. This is the ultimate form of advocacy in the context of your work together, proud and bragging. So I actually use this as a tool whenever we're doing anything in the marketing space or a mobile app space or anything that really consumers are using to figure out how are we going to think about the things we're doing so that we achieve this emotion. So we push people from the left to the right. So in the first part of this tool is understanding where people are today, because we want to move from this demotivating, amotivation space into motivating and earning trust. And then over time, loyalty, and then over longer periods of time where they're extending beyond themselves and they've turned into an authentic advocate in our ecosystem, while avoiding vice. And you could use vice in some contexts to kind of pull people up, but it can be uncomfortable and it can become unhealthy if you're not careful with it. So you put it all together, and you can actually use this to map out where are my customers most likely to be when they come to us, and how on each of these dimensions, how could we move them from here to here? How can we move them on this rainbow to the right through actions, like through sustainable actions? And we use this as a brainstorming tool to figure out features, and I can give you a bunch of examples of how this might work. In my context, we take our best customers and we make sure that they feel relevant because we've included them in terms of belonging. We've included them in a group that they couldn't otherwise be in. We give them some sense of connecting to others that are like them. So in our customer community, we have groups of people that we put together. There's a lot of things that you can do to sort of move your customers in this general direction. The same with your employees, the ones that are really, really good for the business, the ones that you want to hold on to, the ones that you want to really turn into advocates. You move them in this direction. So anyway, this is a tool and a framework. I'll make sure these slides are in the deck so you guys get these. But we want to move people, like I said, from the left side of the rainbow of the tunnel, call this the Maslow tunnel, to here. And again, you would come out of the tunnel from immediate needs through these needs to this point of relevance, like where they really feel relevant as a result of doing business with you, or they feel relevant as a result of being an employee in your stead as their leader. And it's powerful. It works. All right. I would ask if you have any questions, but obviously you can't because this is pre-recorded. So I'll move on to the next framework, which is going to be our framework around advocacy. I'm not even going to try to draw this one. Before we do that, let's talk about loyalty. Let's talk about how we measure loyalty at ITX. I'm going to pull up our tool here. Boom. So this is a tool that we built a while back, and it's built into our CRM. So if we have a bunch of projects that we work on, so the projects might be listed in this drop down, and then there's a bunch of tools here. This is our momentum framework tool, and it's basically a CRM. But I can click on any project, and then I can get the list of people that are associated with that project, and I can click on their names. You'll see a bunch of things in here. First, you'll see what is their role in the context of this project. What level are they at in terms of trust, loyalty, or advocacy? Okay. What's their DISC profile, like their actual DISC profile, and then who is responsible for stewarding this relationship? So in the case of Fred, Gustavo is responsible for stewarding the relationship. And then if you click in, you'll see, okay, where is he on the trust, loyalty, or advocacy scale? And what we've done is we've actually cataloged all of the behaviors that would indicate this person is below trust, at loyalty, or at advocacy. And there it goes. All right, so I'm going to read through these. So we know, and by the way, and we have rules for when they set this. So depending on the size of the project, the size of the client, I want my team to meet at a different sort of cadence. So if it's an enterprise client, they meet and talk about this stuff on a monthly basis. If it's a smaller client that maybe we do releases for once a quarter, we'll meet once a quarter. For really small clients, maybe we meet a couple times a year. But the team of people that interacts with the client, so these folks right here, that's okay, let me change this. But these folks right here get together at a regular cadence, and they assess, hey, what behaviors do we see from this person in our ecosystem? Now, if they're below trust, if it's one of these behaviors, let me read a couple of them to you. This is a new relationship. We've not worked with the individual enough to build trust yet, okay? That means there's an imperative for us to get out there and engage with this person so that we build trust. They've expressed that their relationship is dependent upon a single person's involvement. I mean, for example, if somebody at ITX leaves, I'm going to go work for another company. That's not good. That happens. They have negative conversations about ITX, and we're not included in that. Even if we've heard about it from somewhere else, we're not even sure it's hearsay. We'll tag this person as below trust. When they don't give us an opportunity to improve Whether right or wrong, they don't give us this opportunity to improve. They cut us off in meetings or disrupt us. They limit or restrict our ability to share ideas, or they limit information, things like that. Now, if any of these behaviors are demonstrated, they cannot tag this person as being anything else. All right, now we get to trust. And we're looking for these behaviors. They share approval processes. They share exact timelines and reasons behind the timeline. They provide us with sensitive information about organizational politics. They provide us sensitive information about our competition. They demonstrate they respect our time and authentically apologize if meetings are missed, for example. So there's a bunch of things in here. Loyalty. Now these are higher order behaviors. They use our tools. They use our language. They take our advice. They demonstrate. Here's the demonstrate use of our language. They take our advice. They invite us to their internal events. They maybe make social media connections. So we look for any of these behaviors. We look for this collection of behaviors in this individual. If we see any of them, we're allowed to say, okay, he's moved beyond trust. He's in the advocacy range. Now, in order to be in the advocacy range, or in the loyalty range, in order to be in the loyalty range, he has to also always be doing some of these behaviors, and he can never be doing any of these below trust behaviors. All right. Now, once we get to the loyalty range, we're now looking for advocacy range. And these are much more powerful and they're harder to achieve, but they provide us constructive feedback to help us grow, improve our work together. They defend us to critics when we're not there in the room, and we hear about that. They introduce us to other parts of the business that we're not directly involved in to try to help us grow, expand. They refer us to prospective clients. They volunteer or agree to be a reference. They lend us credibility by helping us improve our case studies, our testimonials with their input. They bring a colleague or new contact to an ITX event. Maybe they recommend an employee for ITX. They praise ITX publicly without prompting. Like any of these behaviors. So we actually do this across the board for all of our projects. So we have a good purview into what our ecosystem looks like. And I can roll this up by client. So I can roll it up by project, which you see is what you see here. I can roll it up by client. I can roll it up across the country and put these metrics on a dashboard. And I'm actually measuring the behaviors that we observe in our customer ecosystem, and it impacts the culture. Now, I want to also point out that whatever behaviors that we tag in this database, they're not right. These aren't perfect. This doesn't actually mean that this guy thinks he's loyal or that he trusts us. It's not about being right. Remember, the point isn't about being right. The point is about coming up with a way, coming up with a way I'll just go back to this. Coming up with a way for us to have conversations about trust and loyalty and advocacy, words that we know are important in our ecosystem. We want conversations to be occurring in the hallways when we're not in the room. Does that make sense? We want conversations occurring in the hallways when we're not in the room. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to impact the culture of the company. We're trying to impact the culture of that our customers are experiencing. Okay, so that brings me to loyalty. So let's talk about loyalty. Or I'm sorry, advocacy. Let's talk about advocacy. So triggering advocacy, this is about showing gratitude in powerful ways. Like the relationship of advocacy, what we want to do is create a vortex. We wanted to create this flip of I thinking to we thinking in our employee ecosystem and our customer ecosystem. We've talked about this. Self-termination theory, right? So here are some tactical ways in which you can do this. We want to maximize the number of people that we pull into this inner circle, this we. Okay, so I see this as like an oscillating thing that we're never done doing. And here's 3 key tactics I found that will help you do this more powerfully. If they give you feedback, positive or negative, if they give you feedback, positive or negative, let's deal with the inside first here. Positive or negative feedback, celebrate it. It's gold. First of all, the positive feedback you can use as fuel for your culture to show your people how the work that they're doing matters, right? You want to include them. So create a way to make them feel like they're insiders, like they're a part of your community. And the greater job that you do of creating this sort of your bubble of people, making them feel like they're part of something bigger, making them part of your community, sharing inside information with them, knowledge with them, the more likely you are to amplify this vortex. And then lastly, celebrate. Make sure you've got a cadence. You can see I haven't finished this slide yet, but you've got a cadence of celebration with these customers. So honor their feedback, celebrate with them regularly. You need a cadence of these things. Include them in special events and knowledge, and you'll create the vortex. And then ultimately what you want to do with your advocates is find ways to encourage them to actually tell the stories beyond you and beyond your team, to pull other people in to expand your base of advocates. And I'm telling you, advocacy is all about the stories that get told. And here's 3 tactics you can use. The first one is at least recognize. I'm sorry. There you go. Recognize them. Like, make them feel special. Demonstrate their accomplishments. Give them something to brag about. Use their name. Teach your people to use their name. Be grateful. Surprise them every now and then. Give them something that's memorable. Give them something that they can only get from you. So for ITX, we have a whole concept of what we call the nefarious brothers, where once they're in the inner circle, we give them, we make Christmas gifts by hands. I make these cocktails. We barrel age them. We give them to our customers, our best customers by hand. They talk about that. It becomes stories that get told in their ecosystem. And every now and then we'll get a phone call. Hey, can I get some of that? Or they'll make a reference to appear in another company, and it's like a door opener for us, and we can turn it into another relationship, hopefully. And then this is the most important one, I think. Simplify the telling. Like, help craft the stories that you want them to be telling to your prospects and to the world. And if you simplify the telling, here's a great example. I have a CEO friend that runs a company in Las Vegas. All they do is build basketball courts. But here's the kicker. They build private basketball courts. So imagine who they're building them for, right? Famous people, famous athletes. They put actual official-sized basketball court in your backyard, or build a building for it, and they're indoors. And these are expensive. So how could you simplify telling in that situation? So I give them the idea, hey, it doesn't cost much. You're taking a bunch of pictures of the project, start to finish, and the experience that they have along the way. When you're done, create a little Google book, 50 or so pictures in it of the whole project, start to finish. Print 50 extra copies and give them to your customer. And he'll give them to his friends when they ask, hey, who did this? Who did this? Who built this court for you? Hey, here's a book with all of the detail and your business card at the end. Simplify the storytelling wherever you can, and it'll make it easier for you to go find that next advocate in your ecosystem. All right, couple of logistical things. I'm going to wrap up here. Couple of logistical things. John G is going to be running, John Gasiak, he's one of my lieutenants. He's going to be running the lecture next Monday for an hour and a half. I don't know how long it'll take you, but what I've asked him to do is to go through the framework, trust, loyalty, advocacy. We've got a little tool. He's going to use Miro and show you some of the tools that we're using. Feel free to ask him any question on any of my material. He doesn't know it all, but he knows quite a bit of it. He's been working for me for a number of years, and he's super smart. But what I'd like him to do is run through a couple of examples of actually setting metrics. And if you're aggressive and you ask him to help you set metrics in the context of your project, he may help you do that. It might be a good example for you guys. He won't be able to do all of you, but I think he can do that, and he can maybe show you some of the exercises that we use and how we actually run these in a workshop environment for our clients. That'd be valuable. I did meet with one of the teams tonight, and I want to be clear about the project work that you're doing, the group work that you're doing. I haven't graded it yet. That's sort of my next task. I promise to do that before next week. I'll get all caught up on the grading. But I want you to think about, I want you to start thinking about the final project. The final project is going to be relatively polished. I'm not looking for production quality here, so don't think that you have to be like a high quality production engineer to produce this thing. What I'm really looking for is that you're thinking and that you're using the material that I'm teaching in class to figure out how are you going to take this company to the next level. Now, I've taught you a bunch of things. You can't possibly include all the things I taught you in a 20-minute video. So what I want you to do is find the low-hanging fruit from vision, motivation, capabilities, roadmap. Find the low-hanging fruit to figure out what are the things that if you were going to have a presentation to the CEO of that company, you had 20 minutes to do it. What things would you present that you think will have the biggest impact on the companies that you're supporting? Instacart, Wegmans, Dungeons and Dragons. Like, what are the things that you would recommend, knowing all the things that you learned in this course, and from what you can see on the outside, because obviously you don't have any, or you have very little insight into what's going on inside the company, but from what you can see on the outside, what are the things that you would recommend tweaking in their strategy or in their tactics that would be most valuable right now? So I want you to start thinking about the project from that context, and you could choose a couple different things. I want you to use diagrams. You can just use a PowerPoint deck and share your screen. I want to make sure each of the team members is taking turns speaking in the video. But the goal is when I'm back for the last lecture, a week from Monday, I want you each to present in class your draft final project, 20 minutes, lowest hanging fruit, what you think are the best strategic actions for the company to take. And I'll give you real-time feedback so you all have the benefit of hearing that feedback when you present the videos to me in class. And we will, and I'll give you feedback, and then I would expect you to take that feedback, polish it up, do whatever you got to do, submit your final project. 20-minute polished video. I like to use video because it's like a time box thing, right? So it's going to constrain you to 20 minutes. It's going to constrain you to really thinking about what are the most important things, what are most important ideas that you should be getting across to the CEO of this company or this department within the company, whatever you're analyzing. And yeah, so that's the goal. The course is for you to really feel comfortable that you can use these tools and actually apply them in the real world and communicate them. So again, like I said, at the outset of the course, I think communication is one of the most important things that we have to hone as leaders, our communication skills. So I expect you to put a lot of thought and energy into the strategic part, like the content. Again, don't worry so much about the production value. Just plan on sharing a screen with some deck and with some slides and talking it through. Since we're doing it you can just use Zoom to record. You don't need any special tools. That's what I'm looking for. So if you have any questions at any point along the way, you can send them to me via email. I am going to be completely checked out next week, so I apologize. Well, I don't really apologize. I'm going to be checked out next week. So if you have questions you want to get answered soon, get them in before the end of the day on Friday. I'll make sure to get them answered before I travel. Otherwise, you'll see me, the next time you'll see me will be in the last lecture when you're presenting your 20-minute video. Good luck. Thank you all.